Well, hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg, here today to do the video that I have been promising or threatening, depending on your worldview, to make. It is new releases that I am eagerly anticipating in 2020. There are a lot of books that are going to be new releases that are coming out that I am interested in, but I'm keeping it to books that are from authors that I'm really familiar with, not like debut novelists that I might want to check out, just because it'll make it a lot easier to do. I've tilted the camera a little bit to the side because the glare from the window it's usually bad, but it's really bad today because it rained and it was snowy, so the reflection off of all of that today it's bad. So I've twisted the camera a little bit. If you have not seen this angle before, yes, this lion is wearing a pussy hat. Deal with it. It's just the way it is. So I figure I will start with fiction, then we'll move into nonfiction, and I have one book that I feel like I'm going to read, but I'm not actually that eager to get to it. But that will be the last one that we do. I wanted to start with the book that is actually already out at the time that this video is published. However, it is a new release in 2020, so let's talk about it. It's American Dirt by Jeanine Cummins. The plot description, I have my Goodreads right here, so I'm going to refer to that. Please don't mind my looking to the side. Lydia Quijano Perez lives in the Mexican city of Acapulco. She runs a bookstore. She has a son, Luca, the love of her life, and a wonderful husband who is a journalist. And while there are cracks beginning to show in Acapulco because of the drug cartels, her life is, by and large, fairly comfortable. Even though she knows they'll never sell, Lydia stocks some of her all-time favorites books in the store, and then one day a man enters the shop to browse and comes up to the register with a few books he would like to buy. Two of them, her favorites. Javier is erudite, he is charming, and unbeknownst to Lydia, he is the jefe of the newest drug cartel that has gruesomely taken over the city. When Lydia's husband's tell-all profile of Javier is published, none of their lives will ever be the same. Forced to flee, Lydia and her 8-year-old son, Luca, find themselves miles and worlds away from their comfortable middle-class existence. Instantly transformed into migrants, Lydia and Luca ride La Bestia, trains that make their way north toward the United States, which is the only place Javier's reach does not extend. As they join the countless people trying to reach El Norte, Lydia soon sees that everyone is running from something. But what exactly are they running to? There has been a lot of buzz about this book. Stephen King raved about it. I know a lot of y'all don't respect Stephen King at all, but he has been one of the leading voices in this book. There's just a lot of buzz, a lot of people talking, a lot of people looking forward to it. Goodreads has been hosting giveaway after giveaway after giveaway, and I won none of them. Interestingly, so this book was published this week on January 21st. Only as it was published did I start hearing a sort of counter-narrative to the buzz, which was that apparently Jeanine Cummins really gets a lot of details about life in Mexico or immigration wrong, or perhaps her portrayal of Mexican people is problematic. It's interesting, I had not heard any of that. I think this book is appealing in a lot of ways that people responded to The Lost Children Archive by Valeria Luiselli, and that was kind of a love it or hate it book, so it will be interesting to see if this book turns out to be more of the same. We shall see. It is out now. I'm on the waitlist for it at my library. Unfortunately, by the time I got on the waitlist, there were already 60 people ahead of me, so it will be a while before I get to this. The next one, let's talk about The Mirror and the Light. This is probably the book that I am most excited about that is going to be a new release in 2020. If you don't know, who are you, where are you? This is by Hilary Mantel. It is the third volume in her Booker Prize winning series about Thomas Cromwell. Now, significantly, both of the previous books in this series won the Booker Prize. It was started by Wolf Hall and followed by Bring Up the Bodies. Now, I haven't talked about this too much. Wolf Hall was a book I really struggled with while I was reading because it's long, it's dense, it has some slow parts. The characters all have the same name. I had to constantly refer to, there's a chart in the beginning that tells you like family trees. I had to constantly refer to that to figure out who people were. So it was a very involved reading process and I was kind of frustrated by it. The thing is, when I finished it, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I kept thinking about it. So originally, I rated it 3 stars, and the more I thought about it, I actually moved it up to 5 stars. And that happened before Bring Up the Bodies was published, and when Bring Up the Bodies was published, wow. So Wolf Hall, it has a really long span. It's Thomas Cromwell's childhood all the way to him becoming the sort of right-hand man of King Henry VIII. And I think that is part of why Wolf Hall can be a very difficult book to get through. Bring Up the Bodies is very different. It's basically, you can tell it's a sequel. It very much fits in with Wolf Hall, but it is a very specific time and place. It is much shorter. And it feels like it has a defined purpose in a way that Wolf Hall doesn't. And that sounds like a knock against Wolf Hall, but it's really not. You have to read Wolf Hall to see how that is. And of course, Bring Up the Bodies ends, this is not a spoiler, it's history, with the death of Anne Boleyn as she is executed. So the Maryland Light picks up after that and traces the final parts of the life of Thomas Cromwell, where he his downfall, as it is. So this book closes things off. He is ultimately executed by King Henry VIII. I really can't wait to read this book. It is a long book. I had not known that until Jason over at Old Blues Chapter and Verse pointed it out to me. It is 784 pages. It is going to be released on March 10th. I'm really excited for this. Really, really, really excited. I don't know if you can tell. I'm excited. Next, let's talk about Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi. Now, I loved Gyasi's previous novel, which was sort of, it's called Homegoing. It's almost like a short story collection, which was a knock against it in a lot of places where I've seen it reviewed. To me, it was wonderful. So basically, the premise is there were two half-sisters in Ghana who were separated because of the slave trade. One stayed in Ghana, and the other was transported to the United States as a slave. And every chapter alternates between the lineage of the sister in Africa and the lineage of the sister in the United States. And each chapter skips a generation ahead. So you find out what happens to their family line because of the slave trade. Now, I loved this book. So I'm really looking forward to Transcendent Kingdom, which is coming out September 15th. So we have a while to go. The premise of it, according to Goodreads, is that Gifty is a fifth-year candidate in neuroscience at Stanford School of Medicine studying reward-seeking behavior in mice and the neural circuits of depression and addiction. Her brother Nana was a gifted high school athlete who died of a heroin overdose after a knee injury left him hooked on OxyContin. Her suicidal mother is living in her bed. Gifty is determined to discover the scientific basis for the suffering she sees all around her. But even as she turns to the hard sciences to unlock the mystery of her family's loss, she finds herself hungering for her childhood faith and grappling with the evangelical church in which she was raised, whose promise of salvation remains as tantalizing as it is elusive. Transcendent Kingdom is a deeply moving portrait of a family of Ghanaian immigrants ravaged by depression and addiction and grief, a novel about faith, science, religion, love. Exquisitely written, emotionally searing, this is an exceptionally powerful follow-up to Gyasi's phenomenal debut. I mean, if I wasn't in because of how much I loved Homegoing, I'm in because of this. I love a book where, and you can see that it is a follow-up to Homegoing because she's also grappling with that idea of family and the legacy of pain that can come from family. And I love that. But it also really grapples with that idea of faith, which is something that I am always really interested in as well. So I can't wait for September to get here, and I just have really high hopes for this book. Next, let's talk about Deacon King Kong by James McBride. This is going to be coming out March 3rd, 2020. I'm a huge fan of the book, The Good Lord Bird by James McBride. I just love it so much. I have a short story collection of his, which was, I think, his last book. I can't wait for this. Here's the premise. In September 1969, a fumbling, cranky old church deacon known as Sportcoat shuffles into the courtyard of the Cause Houses housing project in South Brooklyn, pulls a .38 from his pocket, and in front of everybody, shoots the project's drug dealer at point-blank range. The reasons for this desperate burst of violence and the consequences that spring from it lie at the heart of Deacon King Kong, James McBride's funny, moving novel, and his first since his National Book Award winning The Good Lord Bird. As I said, the one after that was a short story collection. In Deacon King Kong, McBride brings to vivid life the people affected by the shooting, the victim, the African-American and Latinx residents who witnessed it, the white neighbors, the local cops assigned to investigate, the members of the Five Ends Baptist Church where Sportcoat was deacon, the neighborhood's Italian mobsters, and Sportcoat himself. As the story deepens, it becomes clear that the lives of the characters caught in the tumultuous swirl of 1960s New York overlap in unexpected ways. When the truth does emerge, McBride shows us that not all secrets are meant to be hidden, that the best way to grow is to face change without fear, and that the seeds of love lie in hope and compassion. I am in so hard for this book, and one of the things I really love about The Good Lord Bird is that it has a very serious subject matter, but it's a legitimately funny book. And I think this sounds like it's going to be more of the same. And those are all weighty themes. They're themes that really speak to me. I'm originally from Long Island, so I call myself a native New Yorker, even though I now live in Montana. So the idea that this is kind of a New York book as well, and that it tells the history of the city where I come from, and deals with the civil rights struggle, which is something I'm very interested in. I'm really looking forward to that book. Now let's talk about The Night Watchman by Louise Erdrich. This is coming out March 3rd. Now, I did not love Louise Erdrich's last adult novel, which was La Rose. I had some problems with that book. However, I love A Plague of Doves. I think it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And I liked The Roundhouse. I have not read what is considered to be her biggest book, which is Love Medicine. I have been to her bookstore in Minneapolis, though, and if you're ever there, I recommend it. It's a really good store. So I'm not going to read the description of this book on Goodreads because it's really long and there's more than one plot line and it kind of follows all of them, so it feels like it's going to be confusing. So in one of the storylines, there's a guy who's a Chippewa council member trying to understand the consequences of a new emancipation bill for Native Americans. It is actually not an emancipation bill. It will have negative effects on Native Americans in the United States, set in 1953. And there are other storylines that kind of weave around that theme. And I'll read you the last paragraph of the description. In The Night Watchman, Louise Erdrich creates a fictional world populated with memorable characters, which is her specialty, who are forced to grapple with the worst and best impulses of human nature, which is, again, her specialty. Illuminating the loves and lives, the desires and ambitions of these characters with compassion, wit, and intelligence, The Night Watchman is a majestic work of fiction from this revered cultural treasure. Really looking forward to that. Again, that is March 3rd. Next, I did not... so I don't know if this book is coming out or not. Sean the Book Maniac had mentioned in his most anticipated releases of 2020 that Noviolet Bulawayo may have a book coming out, and I looked into it, and so there is a book on Goodreads called Country Country that says it's going to be coming out February 6th. That's really soon, and yet there are no details. So clearly this book is going to get pushed back. Will it get pushed back to 2021? I don't know. There isn't even a description of it. I looked on Amazon as well. It has the same release date, but there are no details. So I'm assuming that this book is going to get pushed back. I don't know if it will get pushed back to next year. However, I love Noviolet Bulawayo's We Need New Names, so I'm really looking forward to reading something else by her. I just don't know when this is going to come out. Now, I mentioned that I wasn't really going to do debut novels or talk about things I wasn't super familiar with. However, there is one that I just held up two fingers, but there is one that really jumped out at me as something that I am really interested in reading. Let me say really one more time. Really. It's Real Life. I'm just going to keep saying Real Life by Brandon Taylor. And this is released February 18th, 2020. So let's read the description. I think if you know me at all, you know why this jumped out at me. A novel of rare emotional power that excavates the social intricacies of a late summer weekend and a lifetime of buried pain. Almost everything about Wallace, an introverted African-American transplant from Alabama, is at odds with the lakeside Midwestern University town where he is working toward a biochem degree. For reasons of self-preservation, Wallace has enforced a wary distance even within his own circle of friends, some dating each other, some dating women, some feigning straightness. But a series of confrontations with colleagues and an unexpected encounter with a young straight man conspire to fracture his defenses while revealing hidden currents of resentment and desire that threaten the equilibrium of their community. Real Life is a gut punch of a novel, a story that asks if it's ever really possible to overcome our private wounds and buried histories, and at what cost. Now, obviously this is about an African-American man, but there are parts of that description that just really speak to me and my experience. I don't know, it just speaks to me. So I'm really looking forward to that. That is February 18th. Now let's get into nonfiction. And the first nonfiction I want to talk about is Sex and Lies by Leila Slimani. Now, I'm a big fan of the two novels that have been translated into release by Leila Slimani. It's called Lullaby in the UK, I believe, but in America it's The Perfect Nanny. And then the other one is Adele. But this is a nonfiction. It is, in fact, the first work of nonfiction in English from the prize-winning and internationally best-selling author of Lullaby, or The Perfect Nanny, and Adele. In these essays, Leila Slimani gives voice to young Moroccan women who are grappling with a conservative Arab culture that at once condemns and commodifies sex. In a country where the law punishes and outlaws all forms of sex outside marriage, as well as homosexuality and prostitution, women have only two options for their sexual identities: virgin or wife. Sex and Lies is an essential confrontation with Morocco's intimate demons and a vibrant appeal for the universal freedom to be, to love, and to desire. Yeah, I'm in so hard. That is coming out February 20th, 2020. And then the next one is Conditional Citizens on Belonging in America by Laila Lalami. And now I read I always have trouble with her name, Laila Lalami. I read her novel, The Other Americans, last year, and I thought it was okay. I didn't like some of the things it did in the end. However, I'm really interested in reading this. which questions what it means to be an American. In this starkly illuminating and impassioned book, Pulitzer Prize finalist Leila Lalami recounts her unlikely journey from Moroccan immigrant to U.S. citizen, using it as a starting point for her exploration of the rights, liberties, and protections that are traditionally associated with American citizenship. Tapping into history, politics, and literature, she elucidates how accidents of birth, such as national origin, race, or gender, that once determined the boundaries of Americanness, still cast their shadows today. Throughout the book, she poignantly illustrates how white supremacy survives through adaptation and legislation, with the result that a caste system is maintained, keeping the modern equivalent of a white male landowners at the top of the social hierarchy. Conditional citizens, she argues, are all the people whom America embraces with one arm and pushes away with the other. Fascinated. I am looking forward to that. That will be out April 28th from Pantheon Books. And another one, The Big Goodbye, Chinatown and the Last Years of Hollywood by Sam Wasson. Now, if you follow along, you know I have a really deep, abiding interest in the Oscars and just kind of film in general. Sam Wasson wrote the book Fosse, which the TV series Fosse Verdon was based on, and I had problems with that book and the way it was structured and the way it ends. It just ends. Basically, because Bob Fosse was worried about legacy and his death, each chapter is named after how many days he had left to live, and when it gets to the end where he dies, it just ends. Like, there's nothing, and I needed a conclusion because I needed to grapple with Fosse's legacy and the really problematic things that he did in his life and how we now understand them popularly to be problematic, and there was none of that. However, I liked the way the rest of the book was done, so I'm willing to give Sam Wasson another try. This book, it's about Chinatown, right? It's right there in the title. So I'm not going to read you the description, but it's about the creation of the movie and cinema at the time. So I'm in. I can't help it. I'm just interested. And that will be out February 4th by Flatiron Books. Now let's get to the one I'm not so sure about. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. Now this is the Hunger Games prequel. We don't really know details. We don't really know what it's about. I think they did release details. I haven't actually looked into the details because I'm curious. It's set in the world of the Hunger Games, Panem, 64 years before the events of the Hunger Games. So starting on the morning of the reaping of the 10th Hunger Games. So I guess my big problem with this, or where I'm at least leery of this, is why does it exist? Is there a story that we need to know, or is this going to be like J.K. Rowling going back and doing the Fantastic Beasts movie, which to me are largely unnecessary and not good and actually really diminish the legacy of Harry Potter, especially the fact that she, after the fact, outed Albus Dumbledore, and now you have these movies that go back and deal with his young life that don't grapple with that. And I am one of those people who thinks representation only counts if you talk about it. So it needs to be actually represented. So I worry that this is going to be something like that, or like The Testaments, which is kind of love it or hate it. There are people who loved it, people who hated it. But I just kind of question, why do we need to have more to the story? Or like Find Me by Andre Osman, which has been like raked over the coals by so many people, and I've pretty much knocked off of my TBR at this point because of some things I've heard about it, and I'm not sure. But this will be out May 19th, 2020. Realistically, I'm probably going to read it. I'll just hate myself for doing it. So there you go. That's a happy note to end on. Anyway, those are the books, the new releases that I'm really looking forward to. Like I said, I didn't really, aside from the one, get into debut authors or lesser known authors. These are just kind of the top tier, I guess you could say, although I hate that phrase because it implies that people like Brandon Taylor are not top tier and they don't deserve that. But anyway, that's what I'm looking forward to in 2020. I'd love to hear what you're looking forward to. If you agree about any of these, drop those comments down below. You know what to do. Thank you for your time watching this video, especially if you made it to this point. And I will be back. Until then, happy reading.